Well, for more on what we can expect from the budget later today, let's get some insights from ENCA business anchor Refuwa Madzena. Refuwa, as usual, a stream of numbers will be out this afternoon.
That's right, and what everyone is looking at here, Jane, is the country's debt to GDP and servicing those costs. So let's bring you some of those important numbers. First of all, we want to know whether Treasury sees the economy growing or not, and are we moving towards growth? Now, the last time Finance Minister Tito Mboweni delivered the numbers in October, Treasury said the economy would have shrunk by a negative 7.8% in 2020, and then it expects GDP for 2021 to be at around 3.3%. So the big question here is, are we on track for that 3.3%, or are we being too optimistic? So we are seeing here that there are many hindrances that we could see, and that is the electricity crisis, the lack of investment, and other things that are creating issues in terms of economic growth. And a big one, of course, and we discussed this at length yesterday, was those jobs numbers, where we are now sitting at a staggering jobless figure that we saw yesterday. The second thing to look at here is that budget deficit. So this is when the difference between the amount that we collect in revenue and what our spending actually is. And currently, South Africa is spending more than it makes. So the last revenue was forecast to be at around 700 billion rand, and that's about 15.7% of GDP. And we need to narrow that gap. The important thing to note here when it comes to narrowing that gap is we've got the borrowing ability. This we don't have, because the cost of borrowing for South Africa is way too high, and so it's going to be difficult for us to approach institutions to get a little bit of money. So the other important debate that comes in here is the taxes. But what's also important is the next figure here, which is our debt servicing cost. And the worrying thing here is that 20% of all the money that South Africa makes goes to servicing debt. So whatever we make as a country, we pay interest in debt, and that, of course, has been increasing over the years, and it's impacting other areas and leaving very little money to build hospitals and schools. And what's most important right now is that vaccine program, and where the funding is going to come to fund that vaccine program. But let's hear from an economist, Nazrima Mullah, about the debt.
Controlling the borrowing costs is a necessary condition, but in order to get back to pre-COVID fairly quickly and surpass that, we need to have the growth reforms that the President talked about in the SONA actually being implemented. And that, I think, is the biggest area of frustration here. It's not just the fiscal issues, it's the growth concerns, and the growth is not about the finance minister. It's about the Minister of Minerals, Wedi Mantashe, accelerating the independent power purchase agreements. It's the telecommunications minister doing the spectrum sales. It's about the other things that just don't get done.
So we are seeing that debt continues to increase, and the task before the finance minister becomes ever so difficult as avenues of revenue decrease. Of course, we do know that the tax base in South Africa is shrinking significantly, and the only positive thing that we've seen is the mining companies producing positive results, and that, of course, has brought in positive tax numbers for the minister. So it's going to be interesting to see where that tax revenue we got from the mining companies is channeled to.
Thank you very much for that. Yes, it's, as we were discussing a little earlier, it's going to be a tough day for him, huh?
Yes.
Lot to balance. Thank you.